Good morning and welcome to the first ever weigh-in of the year and the series. Let's get shredded for Ibiza. $87.4. This is quite possibly the worst shape and weigh-in I've ever been. That's all going to change. Well, we are back. 87.4, body composition, Nate Diaz. He's like an injured gazelle here. Oh, that's a terrible McGregor impression. I haven't bust out the McGregor in a while. Do something about it. I'll work on it. Just interpreting my data. Everyone starts the Ibiza Classic today, which is cool. Looking forward to the next 12 weeks. Monday, March 6th, weigh-in 87.4, enter. Go and do some fasted cardio, back on a Yohimbine and black coffee. 7.5 meg today. Start at 7.5 meg, which is 3 caps, and then we'll work all our way up to like around about 15, I reckon. Abs, fasted cardio. Let's interpret the data. Calories burned, 400 in 20 something minutes, I think it was. 22 minutes. Nice. You just can't beat the Stairmaster for efficiency for burning through calories. Level 8, no hands, 22 minutes, 400 calories. So the days in which I am training fasted or doing fasted cardio and taking Yohimbine, I'm going to extend the period between taking it and consuming my first meal. As we know, when you start to eat food, it negates the effects of Yohimbine. So I've taken it this morning. What I'm also going to do now is get some expenditure in. So come back from fasted cardio, get around about 4, maybe 5,000 steps done with matey, and then that'll allow me to continue to stay in that fasted state. And then I'll have food around about 11ish, and then we'll go and train posterior.
Stop this feeling, this feeling, this feeling.
Breaking the fast, heavy bowl of oats, about 125 grams with frozen raspberries and some Biscoff spread, slice of sourdough, rocket, and 2 eggs. The time is 11 o'clock. I'm going to be in the gym probably about 1 o'clock, I reckon. A couple hours to digest, client work. And instead of going back to David Lloyd so I can film properly, I will probably go either Muscle Hut or Muscle Works. 15 is 300, so 7 is 150, so 5 would be like 120ish, I reckon. Don't need a huge amount of caffeine, I feel good. I had a black coffee in Yohimbine this morning, but posterior is quite a taxing session. I'm hinging, I'm leg pressing, I'm pulling, so just a, a little bump, you might say.
Hip abduction done, go into a lying hamstring curl. Whenever I'm hinging, like with an RDL, I'll always do a hip abduction or a laying ham or a seated hamstring curl. I just feel like it warms the hips up, the glutes and the hamstrings nicely prior to going straight into an RDL. I've just signed up for a month here. We've got Ibiza in 2 months, so I'm going to do a month here and then we'll see how we get on. I like the idea of training at Muscle Hut, but Muscle Hut maybe weighs a little bit of a boot each day. This is like 5 or 10 minutes from me. So going into lane hamstring curl, luckily they've got Prime here. Prime is a fantastic piece of kit because you can manipulate where the load drops off. So when I'm training on my own, I don't want that drop off to drop off at the tail end of the movement. When the hamstrings are in their shortest, I'll load up on a 3 here. So it differs from machine to machine, but for the sake of this lane hamstring curl, it'll be loading the plates on this 3rd bit here. And as you get into that shortened range, it will drop off. You'll be able to see on the next clip. Okay. Okay. into RDLs now. As you saw in that last rep, that machine drops off nicely, almost as if I was training with Josh or Joe, just to take me over. I'll be training solo for a lot of these sessions, so utilising kit like that is going to help me out a lot. 7 for 120. I remember maxing out on this at like 220 during the deepest, darkest off season. Takes me a good 6 to 7 weeks to neurologically adapt to this RDL, but I love it once it's in my rotation. Hamstring bias as well, so we are limiting knee flexion, driving those glutes back, get a nice stretch on the hamstrings, but looking to progress this quite heavily over the next 8 weeks. Oh, the baby. I've missed this machine, the Cyvex lever leg press. Slightly more glute bias on this leg press. Now hear me out, there is still going to be a level of quad intent on this leg press. However, due to our feet positioning, them being higher and slightly wider, that's creating more hip flexion, which means the glute's going to be slightly more switched on. Thankfully, I have this lever machine. If you've got minimal kit in your gym and you wanted to leg press twice per week, one more quad and one more hamstring, then you just simply switch your feet positioning. It's also quite nice. I've got a couple of the guys on the Ibiza Classic doing this single ISO leg press, biasing the glute, because you get a little bit more range. Okay, on to some back work now. Just 2 exercises for this posterior session. Going to go for a row variation, keeping things relatively neutral, if not tiny little bit semi-pronated. And then we'll go on to an iliac pull down. So again, targeting that mid to lower lat. 2 sets 8 to 10 on this. Those that have followed my bodybuilding journey will notice that I've got this, I forget what they call it, xiphoid process. It's a bit of bone in my chest that pokes out, which makes chest supported work quite uncomfortable.
Workout done, therefore this is post-workout. We've got a packet of jasmine rice, 250 grams, 200 grams of chicken with Thai green curry sauce and tender stem broccoli. Thai green curry and rice with tender stem. Gonna eat this, do my final block of work for the day. I've got a couple thousand steps left to do, so I will do those before dinner, and then we shall discuss Yohimbine.
I feel like we need to invest in a proper YouTube studio, guys. This is a very B-Tech setup. I'm not a B-Tech kind of guy. I'm limited to the amount of abduction I have here because the green screen behind me is not very wide. Let's jump straight into our Yohimbine episode, starting with what it is. It's an alpha-2 receptor antagonist. Whenever you see the word antagonist, it means blocker. It's also an aphrodisiac, which reminds me to pull up the comment. The other day on my community tab, I put up a poll asking if anyone's used Yohimbine before, and this individual said, yeah, used it in the past, gave me an anxious feeling, uncontrollable boners. I can certainly vouch for the uncontrollable boners. It's not a frequent occurrence, and it happens when I start to titrate my dose. So I go from like 7.5 meg to 10 or 10 milligrams to 12.5. It happens on that day. There's noticeable blood flow to that particular area, if you want to use a better terminology. It's not like you take it, leave the house and go, oh my God. But yeah, I definitely agree. But there's also noticeable improvements in sexual performance when I'm taking Yohimbine, particularly in the higher dose of like 12.5 meg to 15 milligrams. It targets and blocks the alpha-2 receptors, which are found in fat cells, so we are all predisposed genetically to hold and have stubborn body fat areas. We have female and male fat distribution. I have female fat distribution, as highlighted on my DEXA scan, so I hold higher amounts of body fat in my lower region, so lower abs and glutes, which from a longevity standpoint is a positive because it means I don't have a lot of fat in my or near my vital organs. But from a bodybuilding competitive standpoint, it is a literal pain in the ass because I have to diet myself into the ground to get my glutes in, and I've never really achieved true glutes in peeled, unfortunately. Alpha-2 receptors hinder fat burning and beta-2 receptors promote fat burning. As I just mentioned, we are all predisposed to have stubborn body fat areas, and those stubborn body fat areas have elevated alpha-2 receptors. We can't convert alpha-2 to beta-2. We're stuck with those, unfortunately. Yohimbine binds to the alpha receptor, which allows for catecholamine's, the hormone produced by the adrenal gland when in sympathetic fight or flight, so elevated heart rate, blood pressure, sweating. to bind more to the beta receptor, thus allowing for more efficient fat burning. I'll add the adrenergic receptor mechanism link and all the other links in the description box below. My analogy here is a bit of a weird one. Is imagine Yohimbine as a traffic controller and it's stopping the bad traffic, i.e. alpha-2 receptors, and allowing the good traffic, the beta-2 receptors, to flow. That's my weird analogy. Additional fat loss mechanisms is stimulatory, very similar to caffeine, and we know from research when you have an individual with elevated heart rate throughout a 24-hour period that there is in turn more calories burned, very similar to caffeine, both stimulatory. Slightly activates and blocks certain serotonin receptors, leading to appetite suppression. So I notice when, like today as an example, I wake up, wait an hour, so allow for the adenosine clearance, but I will wait an hour to an hour and a half and have my black coffee and Yohimbine, dosed at about 10 milligrams at the moment, and I will have very strong appetite suppression. I heavily intermittent fast on my rest day. So today, the time is now 11:14. I've been working for a couple of hours. I won't eat until about 2 p.m. and I'm absolutely fine. So there's definitely noticeable appetite suppression, very similar to when I have black coffee and 5-HTP as an example. Also, very similar to caffeine, reduces perception of fatigue, results in increased intensity in bouts of training. So I've noticed before where I start my diet and I jump on the Stairmaster and do 400 calories, I start to reintroduce Yohimbine, and those 400 calories is actually far easier than before. Now we go into the different types. So many of you will be aware of Yohimbine HCl just purely from the Prima Force packaging, the big black and yellow tubs. You've also got Rauwolscine, which is alpha Yohimbine. I have used both. I'm currently using HCl because I'm doing a little experiment of how I feel with Yohimbine HCl. And then in my next diet, which will be around about October, November time, pre-Christmas, I'll be using the Rauwolscine. Now Rauwolscine is far more selective at binding to that alpha-2 receptor that we spoke about. Therefore, there isn't a requirement for the same sort of dosage. We'll come on to dosing very soon. So I, in the past, used alpha Yohimbine on, I can't remember what prep it was, but it was just one cap. It was just one capsule and it had the same effects than when I was using like 12.5 to 15 milligrams without the serious side effects that I tend to experience sometimes on Yohimbine. So you get Yohimbine in 2.5 milligram caps with the Yohimbine HCl. It's still effective, it's worth noting it's still effective, but it requires larger doses, and those larger doses in turn lead to an increase in side effects. So if we can use a compound that structurally is very similar, Yohimbine HCl and Rauwolscine, if we can use a compound that's very similar in terms of its effects without the side effects present, then go for it, then go for Rauwolscine. But like I said, I'm using HCl at the moment. Dosing and timing. Lyle McDonald's talked about this before as well. It's pretty known calculation, which is 0.2 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So if you are 80 key, 16 milligrams, 90 key, 18, and 100 key, 20 milligrams. However, I would not go straight into the deep end with that. And I'm also a coach that likes to kind of keep certain compounds and tips and tricks in their arsenal. So I would probably advise not to use Yohimbine straight away. Try and kind of squeeze as much out of the proverbial stone of fat loss as possible, and then have a compound like Yohimbine to utilize at the latter stage of the diet. Equally though, if you are going quite aggressive in a fat loss phase like I am at the moment, I've got Ibiza in 6 weeks time, I'm using Yohimbine to begin with. Don't mistake the dosing for Yohimbine HCl for Rauwolscine. We don't want you to be taking 15 milligrams of Rauwolscine, which is like 3, 6, 9, 12, like 5 caps. I think you'd be in a pretty dire state. So we've seen noted benefits, and More Plates, More Dates has spoken about this as well, and that's his product. Noticeable effects at 3 milligrams. Now the half-life, and we'll come on to timing now, the half-life of Yohimbine being between 0.25 to 2.5 hours. Try and take this fasted. I would not recommend taking this in the evening time, potentially because you've had food. And as we bring you back to the first slide here on the alpha-2 adrenoceptors in lipolysis, whereas the lipid mobilizing action of Yohimbine was reinforced during physical exercise, completely suppressed after a meal. So we ideally want to be in a fasted state upon wake, and to kind of continue to get and reap the reward of Yohimbine, look to extend that fast. So if you wake up at say 6 and have your Yohimbine and black coffee, then go and do fasted cardio at 6:30, then you could potentially look to have your first meal maybe 9 to 10, if you wanted to kind of utilize those 2 hours post exercise to continue to reap the benefits of Yohimbine, or if you wanted to extend the fast for as long as you like that's what I tend to do anyway. But I do get kind of quite annoyingly hungry and hypo type feelings when I go and do my fasted cardio on a training day and come back and I'm like, I want my food now. Side effects. So we'll just like run through these side effects that are noticeable. Dizziness, nausea, insomnia, anxiety, rapid heart rate, increased blood pressure, hallucinations, paralysis, liver, kidney and heart problems, and fatality. I'd say take those with a pinch of salt. As with anything, if you are predisposed to suffer from these sort of conditions, or if you are someone that is anxious, then taking Yohimbine, I've certainly seen firsthand from clients that say, Tom, I physically can't take it because it sends my anxiety through the roof. Just be very, very careful. Personal side effects that I've felt, between kind of 12.5 milligrams to 50 milligrams, elevated heart rate. Obviously, I get really bad cold sweats, which aren't too much of a concern, really, but it's the hypoglycemia type feeling that I really dislike. It's not a nice, you know, you have kind of euphoric responses when you take supplementation, like MV Pre is an example. That pre-workout is like quite a nice euphoric experience. It's like, ooh, wow, you know, I feel quite nice here, as I'm sure many of you do when you go to Ibiza. But this type of feeling is almost like a nasty euphoric experience. It's like, no, I don't actually quite like it. And there's been a few times where I've bumped my dose up quite heavily and I've just had to pull it back down because I don't like it. Then we come on to the Rauwolscine. So we see here, unlike ECA and Yohimbine, Rauwolscine does not have the associated anxiety and panic attacks, which are prevalent with them. Additionally, the level of shakes and high dosages are basically non-existent. The general consensus for those that take Rauwolscine and those that have taken Yohimbine as well experience the same effects without the side effects, in terms of the positive fat loss effects with the decreased kind of ratty, nauseous, hypoglycemia type feeling side effects of Yohimbine. Finally, where can we purchase these? So I get my Yohimbine HCl from iHerb. I think they're out of stock at the moment. They do come quite quickly. We can't stock Yohimbine in the UK, so we have to import it. I think you can see it on the screen now. I ordered it on March 10th and it came like March 15th. So I only waited like 5 or 6 days for it to come, which isn't too much of a wait. So if you are looking to use Yohimbine, reverse engineer, and also look at maybe purchasing quite a few bottles. If you're doing a couple of cuts throughout the year, reverse engineer, work out how much milligram dose that you're going to be using, and then order what's necessary for the year, so you're not spending so much money on postage. I think my postage was like 10 quid. Equally, if you wanted to get some Rauwolscine from Gorilla Mind, I'd look to do that. It's completely up to you what you want to take. I would say if you are someone that suffers from like anxiety or is someone that doesn't like side effects, I know people that hate like the tingly feeling of pre-workout. I love it. Like I'm one of those guys that I like feeling a certain way. Do you know what I mean? So just give me all that drugs in the world to make me feel like that. But I don't really mind too much. Like I said, I'm going to experiment properly with Rauwolscine at a later date. But if you are someone that is worried about those side effects, then I would look to take Rauwolscine at 3 milligrams per day and see how you get on. And then note back to me. It's always really interesting to kind of collate as much information as possible, particularly from like a closer circle of people around me, which is cool. Okay, that was our Yohimbine PowerPoint. This is a behind the scenes. It's not a bad green screen, that. See what I mean about BTEC setup? I feel like I need a Dr. Disrespect inspired setup. I wanted to finish on spot reduction because I failed to mention it in the first slide when we're discussing alpha-2 receptors. And I feel, and I've discussed this before on my member site and previous YouTube videos, I feel like there is a plausible argument for spot reduction if you start to understand the mechanism of fat metabolism and how, if we target the areas that have higher rates of alpha-2 receptors with heat, so like a sweat belt to promote blood flow, on top of a topical Yohimbine, like Vasoburn as an example, in conjunction with oral Yohimbine, then definitely I think it's more than doable. Obviously, the caloric deficit being the biggest driver, it's not like you could stay in a surplus and think, oh, I've got really fat ass, let me try that particular method. All that will happen with that probably is like a redistribution of fat, which I wouldn't look into that too deeply, but I'm talking predominantly for those that are in a dieting phase, in a deficit. I think the ability to target stubborn body fats is certainly there. If you are using, this is more for the assist guys and girls, a product called Helios, which is a combination of L-carnitine, which I think is a little bit underdosed in the sense that it needs to be increased for its effective dose. So you might, if you want to use Helios, buy L-carnitine from Savage supplements to kind of take you into that 400 to 500 milligram area. But it's L-carnitine, injectable Yohimbine, and clenbuterol. And they promote, the companies that sell it, promote you to inject it into a stubborn body fat area. I did it for 3 weeks prior to my show in my glutes, and they came in quick. not to the point whereby they were diced, but I noticed very, very rapidly once I was applying, I mean, I was going all in. I was applying topical cream, oral, injectable, and a sweat belt, but it worked, you know, and I know Josh Bridgman's a big fan of it as well, as are many other people. But that's just, I just wanted to kind of wrap up and say that there is some scope and argument for there to be a possibility of spot reduction once you start to understand the mechanisms of Yohimbine and fat loss, etc. Right, that's me done. I will see you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. And in the next episode, we'll be discussing, I wanted to do like a topic from each, so we'll be doing intermittent fasting. If you have any questions or queries when you are dieting, drop them in the comment section below and I can create a video for them. But we've essentially got 6 weeks till Ibiza, so we'll try and get as many of these episodes out as possible. Right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, good night. Much love.